Hello, good evening, and welcome to the first Power of Sport Digital Night. Thank you very much for joining us, and also thank you, of course, to our audience, our viewers who are on the Facebook Live feed. I'm going to do some housekeeping for you, first of all. If you wish to ask a question in the room or get the discussion going, and we have some really interesting panelists this evening and some great topics to discuss. So if you want to get involved, the hashtags are either Laureus18, that's 18, Laureus18, or indeed Digital Night. Not Digital Night, just Digital Night. Hash Digital Night. And if you're in the room, actually, if you're in the room, so that the guys who are doing the feed can know that you're in the room, when you do either one of those, if you add hash QADN, that's question and answer Digital Night, QADN. Just so we know you're in the room. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping done. My name is Richard Ayres. I am the CEO of a small specialist agency. We work particularly helping sports businesses make use of digital media. And I am very proud to say that we have been working with Laureus for 4 months now and helping them develop their future opportunities and what they can do with all the wonderful technologies that are now available. So thank you very much for having us, and thank you to Mercedes-Benz for putting on this evening, of course. We've got two topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. One of them is esports. We got any esports fans? Any esports players in the room? Stick your hand up if you're an esports player. Come on, come on. Secretly, there must be loads of FIFA. I bet there's loads of FIFA players. There we go. We've got some at the end. And secondly, we'll be looking at fan engagement and the way in which you use the interaction to be able to drive an audience so you can do sport for good, so you can drive interaction and get audiences really working with your campaign. So we're going to start by introducing the two panelists who are going to come up and talk about the esports question. First of all, Mr. Jerry Newman. Jerry, if you'd like to come join us. Jerry from Facebook. He looks after all of the, I guess, what you would call traditional sports in Europe. Thank you very much. And also Ralph Reichert, who's the CEO of ESL. ESL are, I think, the biggest of the event organizers for esports, and himself a gamer. I found out earlier we both played Quake. I suspect you were a lot better than I was when we were young.
I hope so.
All right, we're going to run a video just to give you some sense of esports and what it's all about.
One of the biggest esports events in the world has toured the planet.
I just want to say thanks to all fans who's come here to support us. It means a lot to me. Love you guys.
All we want to do is play on the big stage. This is where we grow as players.
I think everyone's just really pumped up to get out there.
It's a grand stage for a grand game.
Against the best in the world. Unbelievable. What a storyline that is.
The biggest, most important point, we have got you!
All of you here in the arena, we're part of history.
To be honest, we just met here. You know, CS just brings people together. It's amazing.
It's absolutely mind-blowing where esports has come.
These are those moments I don't think anybody on that stage is going to forget.
I love the emotion. You know, this is what this one's all about. This is it.
They've done what usually you would imagine is impossible. And it's happening! Nothing he does it and he just stands up!
Thanks a lot, guys. You guys made this a great show. We'll never forget the tournament. Just beautiful.
Awesome. Well, a great way to kick off the evening. And there is a key question, however, here. Is that a sport? We've just finished the Winter Olympics. In what way does it compare to this? And as you know, I've had several people say to me in the past, surely esports is just sitting still in front of your computer. Like, you don't sweat There's no raised heart rate. In what way could that possibly be a sport? At least that's one perspective. I suspect that may not be shared by some other people. But we want to do a little bit of a survey. So if those hashtags that I mentioned, either Laureus18 or Digital Night, we're just, in fact, I think we're going to put the information up on the screens. We just would love to do a survey, either for you people in the room or indeed externally on Facebook. Just give us your view of what you think we should be doing. Is this a sport? Is it not a sport? Should it be in the Olympics? Should it not be in the Olympics? Just have a little survey. So Ralph, start us off with some of the numbers.
Well, I mean, if you look at video games as a whole, right, and esports is always a subcategory, there's 2.6 billion people playing video games on the planet right now. That's nearly every third person in the world. And out of those 2.6 billion, there's like 15% of them are esports fans. And that number is growing by 15% a year. So 300 million right now. That's larger than the fan base of the NFL is globally. So it's already there, right? This is a very theoretical discussion for me.
Okay. Is this an old person's conversation? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I think, I mean, I'm 43, right? I call people of my age patient zero. I grew up in 1947, and I had the pleasure and kind of the first chance to grow up with video games, right? People who are older than I didn't have that chance. So from the age of 6, 7 on, I could play video games, and therefore everyone who grew up with it sees this as a theoretical discussion, more or less.
I think you just said I grew up in 1947, which you look very well on it. If
it's
that 74, is the case.
okay.
74.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent, good. Just checking. And also, I didn't.
Test was a test if you're listening.
Good. I was concentrating. So you've got an immense penetration and a sort of incredible audience uptake on it. And what about the sort of structures? Does it behave like a sport? Do you have academies training up and bringing people through? Do you have, how does it work?
So if you think that an alien would come to planet Earth and ask him, how does sport work?
Yeah.
Then show me that website where it's explained how all these structures work. It's not there.
Right.
So from the outside, it's as complicated as traditional sports. Because traditional sports, if you really look at it, without all the heritage knowledge we have by growing up in this world, it is as complicated. What's different is basically two things, right? It's much younger, so it had much less time to build the structures for good and for bad, which are there in traditional sport. And on the other side, it's a very grassroots movement due to the way that we live in an age of internet and bottom-up, democratized ways of having communication. It is very much more driven by actually the fans compared to by traditional media companies, if you have that to other sports. Again, the structures are not even as remotely as complex and fixed as in traditional sports, but if you look at it, it's actually still not that different.
So I mentioned, I made reference to the Winter Olympics earlier on. When I think about esports, I think about it like Olympics, right? Because there are loads of different disciplines and loads of different types of game. And does that mean you get different types of audience in there as well?
It is a little bit of both, right? There's tournaments and leagues we just simply do after one game, very focused, like football. And then we have larger tournaments, which right now in Katowice, a lot of the footage we've seen, it's going on this weekend. It's the largest esport event in the world. 170,000 people are attending this as fans. Where you have 6, 7 games, so more like, a larger athletics world championship, if you compare that. And then you have the Olympics you don't really have, where it's that broad. But we actually had an esports tournament as a lead-in in the Olympics. So I was in Pyeongchang 2.5 weeks ago, where a lot of IOC members came to our event, which was called the Intel Extreme Masters. And we're very curious on how that's going to work out.
Okay. So alongside that goes the use of the media, and it's sort of grown up digital. Is that fair to say? Is that right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
If you look back 10 years ago, neither the TV stations nor the traditional press wanted to give us the coverage we thought we deserve. So through internet platforms, and that's all not so long, right? Facebook started 2 years ago streaming.
Yes, 2 years ago.
YouTube maybe 5 years ago, and so on and so forth. It actually grew up mainly on social media as the press. Our press, the press of esports is social media, and streaming through platforms like YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook.
Okay, so platforms. Tell me about how your platforms have adapted to.
We've made some, I think specifically with esports, because it's a digital-first sport, it's been really easy to sort of work with publishers to adjust things. I mean, the fact that someone's sitting in front of a computer, playing a computer and visualizing themselves at the same time is something we've adapted to that platform. But a lot of the ways that we view sport, and how we're adapting sport production, it's really easy to look at some of the stuff that's going on in esports and to take those early learnings, because there's just so much opportunity to do various different things. But mostly providing that that audience with the picture in game and that picture of that player has been some of the most recent developments that have performed really well. Yeah, and you do lots with casters, and you do lots with you call them casters, right? The broadcaster, they're sort of bringing it to life, the guys who are explaining it?
Yeah, commentators, talents, it's all the same, really.
Yeah. But is that particularly important in esports because so many people don't understand it, or what?
I think it's the same as in any sport. I mean, on the first thing, if my wife 10 years ago watched a football match, she didn't really know what's going on. Right. So obviously a commentator is giving context and, you know, trying to put it in a larger story, and number two, it's actually transporting the emotions or building some of these emotions. Yeah. These are the two effects, and the latter one is probably even more important than the first one, but that is exactly the same in esports.
You used to play football, right?
I used to play football, yes. I was a mediocre successful, but both of my brothers actually played second division in Germany, so they became pros.
Okay, all right, so football's in the family. Isn't there a degree to which your parents must be going, like, you know, you shouldn't be stuck inside your bedroom in front of a computer. You should be encouraging kids to get out, and like, because some people go with that line, don't they?
So, I mean, my two brothers and me always played football, so that was always a balanced way, and we played video games. In 2000, actually, when we founded ESL, I moved away from football. My two brothers stayed, became professionals, became the cool kids. I was like, you know, the stigmatized gaming stuff. Yeah. Now, 18 years later, one of my brothers is the chief gaming officer Schalke 04, so he's actually back into gaming in a football club, and the other one is actually a player agent doing football players and esports fans. So now I'm actually the cool kid again, and they follow my way.
So I had one of my friends who is involved in a team saying he was getting every sports club under the sun, including a whole bunch of 7 League clients, you know, coming to him saying, you know, surely you would want to partner with us because we're a traditional football team. And you know, and the gaming response was, no, not really. Like, we've got our audience, we don't need to. But Schalke was quite early to move, weren't they?
I mean, I think that they were the first, like, larger club who went into esports as a full strategy. And what I mean by that is they just didn't only sign a FIFA player, which you can easily put as a marketing trick, right? That is the very natural first step, which makes sense. Don't want to judge it anyway, but that is not a full commitment to esports. They went fully in and bought a League of Legends team for actually a hefty sum and tried it the real way. Okay, and so now NBA have now they have the 2K game, you know, which is a good game to play, and I think a better one to watch almost than FIFA is in terms of the way you can experience it. And NBA are doing some stuff, aren't they, in traditional, and they set up a league, I think?
Yeah, it seems that it's a common trend, I think, for traditional sports to look at ways in which you can create new media assets. Yep. So how do you sort of monetize and use media to engage a new audience? And we've seen this with Formula E, we've seen it with the NBA, and we've seen it with, as I said, many of the teams and the clubs that are out there today. Certainly in my experience, I think the initial need for it is to be able to engage an audience that isn't traditionally going to engage with a football club. Yep. Or even to just go very deeper with an audience to drive some form of affiliation or fandom that isn't there anymore.
Okay. So I want to talk about one last topic, and then maybe we'll go to some questions, if you guys have any, hopefully in the room, which is the sort of social return on the investment. You know, because there's a bit of me that, you know, as a former gamer myself, hopes that actually there is this positive impact economically, culturally, I mean, health, I don't know. What is the outcome from a sort of sport for good perspective of esports?
I think if you, again, coming back to that alien story, if you really look at gaming as a medium, it is incredibly, incredibly exciting. It is interactive. No other medium is interactive, really, if you look at traditional TV and press. it is extremely social. As the most exciting thing for me playing football was actually I like football as a sport, but it was a team, right? It's all about having these 10 mates who go with you and you achieve something together or lose something together. In most video games, that is a big part of the story. So that whole, and point number 3, which is extremely important as well, it is naturally international. In traditional sport, it's very hard, right? I mean, I played probably, I don't know, 500 soccer games in my life, and 10 of those were against people from other countries. Out of my 500 esports matches I played, 50%, 250 were against people from other countries. So that whole thing, we think in how people come together and learn beyond their borders is so natural and inherent in esports. It's good for the world.
Excellent. So one of the questions that I wanted to pick up that's come in off Twitter, a guy called Timo Jonsson talking about international. I'm hoping it's Jonsson rather than Johnson, but with Timo it looks like it is. And the fundamental question was, do you think esports is going to get to the point where it has a bigger audience than sport, full stop? Are we going to see an esports sport?
Well, yes.
Okay, good. Jerry, your platform will probably benefit either way, and certainly will be hosting a hell of a lot of that audience both ways. Can you see which way it will? Which one's bigger?
Well, I think there's too many factors in that. Different aspects of different countries in terms of where they work, but just seeing some of the early video results and the metrics from the ESL on platform, they're incredible. I mean, they're up there, if not already, competing with some of the live sport on platform.
And maybe to be more precise, right? I mean, this is a long game. I'm not saying that's happening in the next 5 years, but if you look at overall trends, right, the world's getting more digital every single day, and therefore all digital media will just dramatically grow going forward, and in 50 or 100 years, it's actually a no-brainer that video games and esports will be bigger than traditional sports.
Is that because it'll just merge? We'll just cease to see any difference between playing a game which is virtual and playing a game which is real world?
Will have an effect, but I think that the underlying logic of the ease of accessibility, and there's one more complicated thing. If you look at all traditional sports, starting with Formula 1, if you think about what is the worst sport to develop in terms of watching, right? You come up with Formula 1, something very close. And all traditional sports were actually, built for playing, for attending, for participating in it, and none really were built with the idea of this is a great sport to watch. Yeah. In video games, the next generation of games will figure that out, which is to a large extent a mathematical problem of what is the best format to actually watch a sport. And that's going to be, incredibly more exciting as the things we're watching today, and therefore will have, a big effect on it. And it's not going to be me who's going to figure that out. Much smarter people will do that. But it's very natural and logic, actually.
Okay. So there's a question from a chap called Arno Take, and the point he was thinking about to your direction there was, if you're playing esports, does that help you? Formula 1, I'm thinking, but there could be lots of other games as well. Are the skills that you develop in playing esports going to help you in traditional sports, in real-world sports?
Yes, again. So I mean, there's only one really big difference between traditional sports and esports, and that is physical strength, speed, endurance, all of these things. Everything else, tactics, team communication, strategy, all of that stuff is reflexes and hand-eye coordination are probably better trained in esports and in any traditional training. So there's, in a lot of sports, a very natural and logic merge between both, or crossover. Okay.
And you said to me earlier on that an esports player will do 300 APMs, was it?
Yep.
Which is 300 actions per minute.
Per minute, yes. It's like 7 a second.
Okay, so
that's like that.
And we'll do that for a long period of time while they're playing a game.
So 20 to 60 minutes.
So if you compare, I mean, I'm trying to think. I did a bit of shooting in university. If you compare that with shooting, which is basically lie very still, lower your heart rate, and wait, it's the kind of
which is a skill too. It's the opposite.
It's a skill, but I mean, what's the difference? They kind of Okay, great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm looking at the interaction that we've had coming in. I thought what we might see on this feed was a lot of people saying, esports is not a sport, should be totally separate. It's a complete misnomer. It's in the wrong world. But either Ralph is very convincing, or actually the audience is a significantly better balanced on its opinion. But you know, for sure, there are plenty of people out there who believe that actually these worlds, it's all just in the same mix. Good, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you could thank our guests. Thank you. And Jerry, you're staying here. Thank you. Ralph, would you like to?
Yep, I'll leave that way.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to our second topic for the evening, which we were calling, once they sort of, you know, believe the hype. The topic that we'd like to discuss really is the way in which the ability to be able to motivate an audience can have an incredible impact on the way in which your sport and its message, or your campaign, or your project, if it's about sport for good, has an impact on society, on the real world. Okay? The digital world and the real world completely merged. The social media channels in particular are a way of getting people motivated and involved, and that has become fundamental to the success of any sporting project. So we have Jerry, who's staying with us, because Facebook does a lot around that. But I'm also going to invite to the stage, just checking the audio, Yuvraj, if I can, I'll bring you up first. That would be lovely. Marvelous. So those of you, any cricket fans in the room? Excellent, some. He used to play some cricket, apparently. Still playing? Are you any good, though, really? You've got a bit old. Surely. And you know, former Test player, of course, and with immense social media following. And also, we're bringing on actually the chair. Are you the chairman, Mr. Chairman, of the Laureus Foundation? Excellent.
The Academy.
The Academy, the Laureus Academy. Sean Fitzpatrick, of course, former All Black and
legend.
And legend. Okay. Let me write that down. Legend.
You know.
Yeah. So I'm told, allegedly. I had to watch sit in Murrayfield yesterday with my wife getting very excited as England were destroyed on Sunday. Anyway, Saturday. So, fan engagement. We're going to start with you, Raj, and if we may, I think we're going to run the film, gentlemen.
My name is Yuvraj Singh. I'm at the Cooperage ground in Mumbai, and I've been announced the Laureus Ambassador for India. It's a huge honor to join the Laureus family.
You can see the hysteria when they see a star like Yuvraj Singh. For our girls to have that aspiration, to think of what it will be when they excel in the sport, I think there's a new aspiration created today by meeting Yuvraj Singh.
It's really kind of amazing exposure for the kids and for the coaches, because like Yuvraj is a big star of cricketer who come and meet the kids, share their journey and all. That's really kind of motivation in the sports for development sector.
Red card! Referee! Okay, yellow is fine. Shoot! Yes! You got some skill, huh? I think it's very important to spread the message across, brings out the best in you, getting out the best of children and doing good for sport.
So what we're finding is that whilst you've ceased to play cricket at a senior level, you are, I'm joking, you are taking up soccer. Apparently.
Yeah, I mean, as you see, my skills are pretty good over there. And, definitely not my second career, but just trying to get the best out of the kids and have fun.
It must be incredible when you go and you have that sort of personal connection with them, because I bet they get super excited.
Definitely, I think it's important to take that confidence out of young kids and to motivate them to play sport, whatever they feel like getting out of the ground. I think when we talk about sport, sport has about to change the world. And definitely the young adolescent, and especially in our country, we have these issues where the young child is not told or motivated to play sport. It's mostly, especially for the girls doing housework. So I think it's important for us guys who've inspired the younger generation is to go out there and boost their confidence and get the best out of them through sport.
Okay. And you had your own personal, tell us about your personal stories, right? Because you had a challenge, and out of that you formed your own
Charity, yes.
Yeah.
I went through cancer after India winning the World Cup in 2011. And when I went through my journey, I just decided to come back and do something for my society. And I think my journey, what I went through was a great way to connect to people. Especially, I came back to my sport and continued playing for a few years and motivated, inspired a lot of young people to tell them that if you believe in your dreams, whatever adversities you go through, you can conquer them and come back and play as long as you believe in yourself. And through my charity, which is called We Can, if we together can fight cancer was the motive behind it. And at the moment, we have young children who've been diagnosed with cancer, come back from treatment. Parents have lost all the money in the funds of treating their children. We try to give scholarships to them and bring them back to where they deserve to be.
Wow. But you're also involved with Laureus, which is, I mean, it's very sort of similar goals of sport for good and helping. So what are you doing with Laureus?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, I've been chosen ambassador by Laureus last October for India. I think we have the same goal for the future is sport for good. Can change the world, can change, especially for young adolescents, just to encourage them to play sport. I think if you encourage them to play sport, it takes the mind off whatever adversities they're going through, and especially the underprivileged children that are in India, it sends a strong message to them. And people like us can actually inspire them to, come out of it by playing sport.
Okay. And you have I suppose a large-ish Facebook and social media following, a mere 14 and something million on Facebook and another 5 on Twitter and another 5 on Instagram. So, you can reach people with those messages sort of incredibly directly, which I think you do, a lot of that, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great way. Social media is a great tool to connect with your fans. I remember when we were growing up and we looked up to sports personalities, wanted to be like them. There was no way to connect with them. And I think it gives us the power to connect with those people and, to be like the people they want to be, send out those positive messages. I mean, the position we are today, we have the power to influence the world. We have the power to influence, our own societies and our countries. And I think it's a great power tool and use it to as much best way we can.
Yeah, it certainly is one of those things, isn't it, where you used to have to communicate always through the media. There was somebody writing the story, somebody spinning it, changing it, whatever, and you don't need that anymore. Now you have a direct line, which you can go straight.
Yeah, it definitely happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the more negative news, I mean, people just enjoy watching more negative news. I think social media, again, gives you the power of, giving your honest opinion out there and, connecting with people and telling them who you actually are.
Yeah.
Where while the media was actually, no offense to anyone over here, was actually giving a picture of you which you're actually not. So I think it's a great power. It's a dangerous tool as well.
Yeah.
To spread the negativity, but I think for influential people, I think it's a great tool to build the world.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Sean, excuse me. You have been doing a lot with the Academy, and we have a couple of videos that we'd like to show, actually, but they're sort of stories of ways in which stories were told of change and of success that then kind of just reached a much greater audience. So I'm going to tell the video guys if we can run the Aussie Boys video.
Pick it. Pick it. Isaac Heenan, one-on-one. We'll get it, and it's 3-2 for Gary Rowan. He goes over the fence.
We were giving Mark something so they could listen to the commentary off like Triple M or something like that, and then that didn't work in the second quarter, so I just decided to call the game for him.
We heard this amazing commentary and I just tweeted it. And here we are with 2 amazing boys.
It's been amazing. I met all the players and I've loved it.
Now, I should add at the moment, particularly for those who are on Facebook, that the best sporting moment, you can vote for that at the moment. You saw the information there on the screen. Do go and watch some, there's some phenomenal stories in there that are well worth interacting with. Speaking of interaction. So, another part of that storytelling journey, have you done a lot with storytelling and sort of exposing those stories?
I think that's just a classic example of where we were 18 years ago to where we are today, in terms of being able to tell our story like that. It's just phenomenal. The sporting moments the best sporting moments is a new initiative that we've brought in, and it's engaging so many more people, and seeing stories like that. They're just wonderful. Yeah. And then also being able to use it for our projects in terms of telling our story, right, and telling the projects, the ACNs of the world, the Active Communities and Export, being able to tell their story, and wonderful today they were announced as the Sport for Good winner, and for Gary to be able to get that out and tell the world the difference that these charities are making in the world, which is just phenomenal in terms of engaging children.
Well, that video of the boys and that story, as the journalist was saying, it had phenomenal reach for what was just a tiny little story, and it's fantastic when those things cut through and really kind of make a difference.
It is, and that's wonderful, and we're here celebrating excellence in sport, but the Sport for Good Foundation has such a great story, and we need to tell people about that. It's a hidden gem, really.
And you've got a fantastic network of, the ambassadors that Laureus has it's crazy, their profile. And you can use those to further the Sport for Good message.
To have people like UV and our younger academy members, some of the older ones still struggle a little bit, but to have people like Cafu, Del Piero, Tony Hawk, Yao Ming in the Chinese way that they do it, it's just phenomenal to be able to get that out. And as Mandela said, 18 years ago here in Monaco, that sport has the power to change the world. And we need to tell people about that, because it does, it works. And we can see it sitting right in front of us. Yeah. The power of sport. And India, we've got some wonderful projects in India that are just amazing. And we need to tell people, so things like this, and to Mercedes and our partners, this is a really good way to tell the world.
You mentioned ACN there a minute ago. For those who don't know what ACN is or didn't see the announcement earlier on, I think we are going to we have a short video that we're going to play on that as well.
My name is Ade Akande, and I'm a volunteer for Active Communities Network. I come from England, London, Southwark. I always say that I wouldn't change where I grew up. I wouldn't change what I went through. My greatest achievement is probably just not dying early or not going into prison. I had friends going to prison for a long time. I had a friend dying. When a friend dies, you can either do two things. Or you could go around, start killing everybody, go into a madman, or you could just be successful. In the beginning, it was just about the football. Growing up, I never had it planned to be a coach or a volunteer. So I got given the opportunity, and I kind of took it. It was the coaches and the staff at Active Community that actually saw these attributes in me, that I'll be good at it. I think sometimes you've got to earn it from kids. Kids don't really just give their respect to anybody. Whatever you want to do and whatever you see, put your 100% in it and just do it. Organisations like that are really important because they're doing sports for good. will push us to put our personalities out there. My name is Ade Akande, and I'm a volunteer for Active Communities Network.
Excellent. You know, it's a great story. Obviously, there's a bit of me wants it to be in North London instead of South London, but there we go. But that's the bias. You have Gary. You mentioned Gary in the audience. Let's bring Gary into the conversation now. Gary, this is your project, right?
We set it up around 12 years ago, originally in South London, exactly where that was shot, because as you know, it's God's own country, South London, Richard. But since then, it's sort of extended across the UK and Ireland, and we're also working with Laureus to support other projects around the world. So yeah, that's us.
Fantastic. Sorry, do you, tell me what your impressions were when you came across Gary and that project.
I went to West Belfast. The first time I met Gary and Jim. I don't know if Jim's here. Is Jim here? He's not here. He was in a. I said it was a shed. He said it was a porter cabin, but it was literally a shed. And working with in Northern Ireland. It's 20 years since the Good Friday Agreement. There's been more youth suicide in those 20 years than the deaths from all the conflict in the last 30 years. So there's a real issue. And along with Jim and Gary, they set up a project there, bringing boys and girls together, Protestants and Catholics, and making a difference. And we first went there 6 years ago, and I went to Stormont and spoke to McGuinness and Mr. Robinson, and they told us to go away. They didn't want to fund it. And to Gary's credit, 2 years later, you know, up to date, they've given over sort of 700,000 euros. So what they're doing, we still support it wholeheartedly, but it's making a difference. And through this and all these things, we're very pleased and obviously thrilled that they won the award today.
Yeah. So congratulations on the award. Because our focus is the digital night, forgive me for focusing on the nerdy stuff. How do you use, because that's a big thing, and over the years that you've had the project going, it's only in the last 4 or 5 that really kind of that's kicked into gear, I guess, as a marketing tool. Would it? Tell me how you use digital.
I'm not a digital expert either, Richard, so I'm going to go with it. But no, I mean, obviously, from when we first started, it was always quite difficult to get any kind of real messaging out there. Press coverage, you had to go through the usual channels of trying to engage your local newspapers, your local radio, local media. Anything else happened on that day, you'd disappear anyway because somebody's cat got stuck up a tree or whatever. It was quite difficult at times to really get the message out there. And also very, very difficult to really get it over in a very succinct way that people can buy into. Because I can stand and do a 20-minute presentation on Active Communities Network, but most people would disengage very early on that. I think over the years, the social media thing in particular has been quite big for us. You can really sort of get a message over very quickly in X amount of characters on Twitter. People buy into it. I think more recently, and it's probably only been the last 2 or 3 years, and to be honest, just watching that video there and the other one that's going to be on stage tomorrow from Belfast, increasingly those short films can probably put over a message and a sense of what we achieve far quicker than any amount of interview presentation that you get. So yeah, I mean, for us, the whole sort of social media, digital sort of platform has just made it so much easier for us to engage new people, get the politicians and the stakeholders, like Sean's already discussed, to buy into what we do and take notice of what we do. But also something like that, which makes it, I think, a very, very real story that people can understand and see the impact more than anyone standing on stage talking about it can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think just on that point, in terms of, we have 64 Academy members now. We started with 35 founder members. We now have 64. We have 130 odd ambassadors. But it's funny how we're now, in terms of the cost of originally we used to go around all the projects and use our status to encourage children to play sport. That's become very expensive, and an air ticket is money taken away from the foundation. So the virtual ambassador has become so important. which is something quite different. We had said that 18 years ago. What are you talking about? We can't do that. But it's the way children engage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one way that we're trying to use the digital network.
So
is that right? Is that the right terminology? Digital network? Is that
perfect.
Right?
You've nailed it.
Thank you.
Smashed it. Never mind. Whilst we're thinking about it, actually, I would mention that that video with Addy in it is on. I'm pretty sure it's on the YouTube channel. And if you search for that video, pretty much Parasport, Addy's story, you will find it. And a like in there will help, obviously, sort of drive it through the algorithm, raise the profile, and all of that has more positive impact. Which, let's face it, is what we're all focused on as part of this greater good.
Why don't you ask Addy how he uses his...
Yeah, good idea. Would that be all right?
Boys?
Grab a microphone. Thank you, Addy. So, a question. So, let's start with what platforms are you on? Are you on Instagram?
Only on Twitter.
Just Twitter?
Yeah.
What?
Not really.
No Snapchat, nothing?
No.
Really? Okay.
Oh, there we go.
No, I do have a Snapchat.
You do have a Snapchat?
Yeah.
You just don't use it very much?
Yeah, no.
That's all for the private messaging. And so, what do you do on Twitter then?
Hardly anything.
That sounds like you're consuming stuff. I mean, if you're a football fan, you must be like...
Yeah. I do use the social media to follow like the transfer news or live scores.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. And do you use it at all when you're communicating with the kids? Because you get, the kids in the video or in the courses.
We wouldn't use social media to talk to them, safeguarding.
Ah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Of course.
And silly question.
Yeah. And who, as an aside, who's your football team?
Manchester United.
Oh.
Hey, not Man City.
Because he's a Londoner, so obviously he's a fan of Man United. Good. Well, they've just gone on YouTube after a long time, so things are changing for your club as well. Good. Thank you. Talking about platforms, there is another platform in the room, of course, where all the kids go. I say the kids. I feel like an old man, that's why. How does Facebook do sport for good? Because you've had some initiatives around that, right?
Yeah, I mean, overall we're a mission-based organisation, so we're all about connecting the world and building community. In fact, that mission statement, building community, only really changed about a year ago, and there were lots of people running around our organisation going, God, what are we going to do? How do we adjust what we're doing to build community? And I just sat back and go, it already happens. Sport does naturally build community, and it's really touching to see some of the videos and hear some of the stories that are happening. So for us, we just act as the amplifier and enabler of that. So recently we've invested heavily in a groups product, which is a simple way of building a smaller forum for people who have like-minded ideas. And this can help small community initiatives go from nothing to something very, very quickly. A really easy way to connect and bring stakeholders together. And this is great for people who may find very niche interests or very niche views, or in some cases you'd have people who have very niche diseases or syndromes and find community to engage with people. We've also introduced a whole range of social good tools. So we have a real focus on, how can we use our platform to create more social good, which again goes very nice and hand in hand today. Some of the most recent developments of that are the ability for live donate. So we've seen everything from Bill Gates playing Roger Federer to football teams and basketball teams now running live sporting events and people donating in real time to those. So we're only just starting on this journey, but we're really, really reaching out and trying to find people and organisations to really take advantage of this huge audience of people, the passion that they have for their sport, to do it for social good. And yeah, we're just on this journey for social good at the moment, but I think in terms of as a platform as it stands, we're seeing a lot of publishers understand their social responsibility. There's a Internet First Publisher Sport Bible. Most recently, I've been asking their fans what means most to them. What are the topics that really sort of touch home for them? And mental health was a big topic for those guys. So they produced a whole series of original content on the stuff that people don't like to talk about in a tone that really resonated with younger people. So already there's a lot of publishers out there that are already knowing that there's a huge amount of reach out there. There's an audience who wants to engage. And the algorithm has a wonderful way of sort of meeting those people up and marrying them together.
Okay, great. So you mentioned the algorithm there. I mean, obviously the Facebook algorithm is one of the things that controls the extent to which people see some stories and not other stories. Where does, you know, if it's charitable work, if it's sport for good work, where does it fall in that that control mechanism? Is it something that, you know, has a greater opportunity to connect with people, or does it get throttled back?
Well, there isn't really any throttling or acceleration where that's concerned. The algorithm will respond to what we class as meaningful interactions. So stuff that really generates conversation and isn't placid sort of layback viewing. You know, we don't want to encourage people to sit there and stare at their phones for hours upon hours, continuously watching the same video. We want people to come together and connect. Again, I think that really resonates, because the more that people start to talk and discuss around subjects and topics, the higher that chances of that video appearing in someone's newsfeed, which again means that the emotive videos like we've seen today are the ones that genuinely get people talking. Yeah. You know, real life stories which make people think, I can relate to that, or, you know, I have a strong opinion towards that.
So if you were advising these guys on what they could be doing on your platform, what would be what's the thing that really makes a big difference?
Emotive storytelling. You know, if you're going to be telling real stories like you've seen today on the VTs, they're perfect. You know, stuff that is really authentic makes a massive difference. If you're looking to do things for social good, I think groups are a great way of funneling smaller environments of people into smaller buckets, so you can have more intense conversations, especially if you're pulling in people like volunteering. They work really well. And the social good tools for, you know, just raising money. I mean, a lot of these businesses today, you know, they need fundraising to stay alive. Okay.
I was looking for the social interaction just to see if there was any. They all think you don't know what you're talking about. No, they don't. They're very complimentary of all the efforts. The question of sort of the extent to which you can control it yourself. You know, and this isn't just a question for you, Jerry, but for, you know, the team as a whole. You see, they're transfixed now. You're transfixed on the Twitters. Do you see the future of sort of getting the message of sport across being increasingly more social, like more than mainstream, more than newspapers, more than TV, more than, you know, traditional media, as a way of connecting with your audiences? Is that the future? Jerry, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think you're correct. I think what we're noticing on our platform is that there's almost this word democratization used, you know, quite a lot really, but you're almost democratizing sport, and you're seeing new forms of sport come together, and they're connecting people way beyond, you know, traditional means. So you no longer need an arena, you no longer need thousands of fans coming in, or, you know, a whole production team. You can run a sport which is very passionate to you and a small amount of people, and publish it. We had World Chase Tag, which is one of the really well-performing videos on our platform, which is effectively the classic playground game of tag. Get 2.2 million people watch it once it's been made into a competition. And these are fantastic stories that never existed before, and these are great opportunities where sport can connect people and bring people closer together.
Yeah. Sean, do you feel like it's the future direction for you?
We just need to be, you know, on the ball really, in terms of making sure that we're keeping up with the game. Yeah. And we don't fall behind. You know, the way we're doing it yesterday is not good enough to win tomorrow. And we have many analogies we can use in sport.
It's certainly one of the things that we see a lot with our clients. Even you know, the very large and well-funded clients who have big digital teams, staying on top of the changes day in, day out is very, very difficult.
Yeah, and that's the key really.
Yeah.
And we need to realise that we need to make sure that we are on tune.
Yeah, and there's a fundamental question as well in the background, is one that came in, which is, it's less about sport for good, but it's kind of connected because it'll be where the audience is. Do you feel that there'll come a time when actually, you know, the platforms are the places where you go to consume the main sport itself? You know, that's where you go to watch, and as a result of that, that's where the audience is, and then that's where the charity should be, and then that's like, does that feel like that's coming? You're nodding. You feel like, I mean, can you see the?
So you know, I've got young children, and yeah, the way they consume sport, TV is so different to what it was 2 years ago. Yeah. So we need to make sure we're on the ticket with it, and having young academy members coming in and new ambassadors, it's good for us, and we need to be open and listen, because we need to keep up.
Yeah, Jerry. all sports on Facebook from now on.
I think that we're trying to aim for at Facebook is a very different viewing experience of sport. Not something that's very linear and you lay back. We are really working hard with rights owners and production companies, and we're adapting our platform so that it feels like a very interactive process. I mean, rather than sitting there in the living room, we want it to be as close to you sitting in the stands and sort of cheering in the stands and being there and sharing your emotions with fans as well. That's what we're aspiring to, and if we believe if we continue to work on this, then the social experience that you get in the stadium, if we can make that feel a little bit like what you're doing on Facebook, then we're pretty confident we're going to attract a lot more eyeballs and a lot more engagement on platform, which is going to be just what rights owners and broadcasters want.
Yeah. So Yuvraj, you have a incredible audience at your fingertips, quite literally. Is that an audience that you are specifically aiming to develop because it will help You We Can and it will help Laureus? Is it, and do you get a lot of reaction from that audience that you can then, channel into the Sport for Good sort of efforts that you're making?
Yeah, definitely. I think more inspiring stories would definitely help connecting the fans and getting the right message across and telling them what actually is going to motivate you to get out of your seat and be something for your friends, be something for your family, for your community, and stand up and keep on sending the same message across and to build a platform like that.
Great. Gentlemen, we're going to call this to a close. Thank you very much for your thoughts and your interventions. Clearly the messages that we've been hearing this evening are about the way in which you can use the technology to be able to reach audiences. You can tell the stories. That was the fundamental message. If you can really make the transparent what's going on, all the incredible work that these guys are doing, then actually you can get people motivated to be able to sort of drive forward and really sort of push these Sport for Good projects along. We also heard, of course, about esports and the way in which it works and the future of where that's going, which was another fascinating conversation. So thank you to these three and also to Ralph earlier on for their input. Thank you for your questions online and, well, not so much in the room, but thank you for your questions. And for the first Power of Sport Digital Night, we'll say good night.